Good evening, everybody. I'm Derek Michaud, and it is time to go Flush in the Pocket, presented by Brunswick, sponsored by Just in Time Recreation. Check them out at justintimebowl.com. We have the episode we've all been waiting for. I've wanted to do this for a long time. We are going to chat with a 47-time champion, 7-time player of the year, and he's won some senior titles. I believe, 14 senior titles?
16.
16 senior titles.
And one they didn't count.
One they didn't count. Well, we have.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Walter Ray Williams Jr. Walter Ray, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. So, how did you get started bowling?
Well, I actually played horseshoes first, and at a local horseshoe tournament where I lived in Eureka, California, one of the guys was a friend of one of the juniors I was playing with, and he invited me and my brother to go bowling, and we liked it. Joined the league and had fun doing it. And then I didn't really bowl again until I bowled often. I bowled like maybe once a year until I was a senior in high school, and they offered it as a PE class, and I'm like, I like bowling, so I got back into bowling and joined a men's league that summer, even though I wasn't 18 yet. And I like I said, I didn't really grow up in junior bowling, so I didn't understand, that junior bowlers, some of them were like 21, 22 years old or whatever. Collegiate bowling, I didn't know anything about that. Joined a men's league the next year, bowled a couple of months. Unfortunately, my appendix ruptured on me, and my parents had moved to Southern California, so I ended up moving to Southern California. And when I got to the hospital at that time, I'm 6'2", I weighed 133 pounds or something like that. I was very thin, and didn't really bowl again until the next season. So it was actually the fall of 1978 that I started bowling again. So I was almost 19 years old when I kind of got into bowling, and then I pretty much bowled continuous since then.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Who coached you?
I had the guy teach me how to bowl, and then watch you guys on TV. That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
After I was on tour, I had a gentleman, one of my good friends who's a good bowler, Dave Wilk, who's actually uncle of Mark Fay, who was Rookie of the Year one year on tour. Dave was a very good bowler. He was not a PBA member, but he was a very good bowler, and he kind of worked with me one time to go from 4 steps to 5 steps. I'm not sure how much of a difference that made, but I kind of use 5 steps most of the time now. In fact, when I go to 4 steps, I have like a really, really short stutter first step, and then go to the 4-step delivery. And I do that on occasion, usually when I want to hook the ball a little bit more, because they usually put a lot more oil in the lane than I would rather see. And for me, it's a way to kind of reinforce that I'm trying to throw the ball slower and try to hook the ball a little bit. I can probably do just all that doing 5 steps. It just kind of helps reemphasize. And I could probably throw the ball just as hard with 4 steps as I can with 5. So,
all right. And anybody has any questions, put them in the chat, and please address it as Walter Ray. I keep forgetting, I've known you for a few years. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I can blame my parents on that.
Okay.
Little story behind that.
Sure.
Obviously my dad, Walter Ray Williams Sr. His dad was Walter Whitman Williams, and his wife Hazel Ray Williams, Bolshol, I think. But anyway, they had a son named Rollin. They had another son. They named him Walter Ray after my grandfather and my grandmother. But they always called my dad Ray, and they always called my grandfather Walter. And I have 3 older sisters, and when they finally had a boy, they named me after my dad, but they always called me Walter Ray. So, and I've always signed my name Walter Ray, and I guess, and what's really kind of ironic, had I gone with WR, It actually takes longer to say, and people would probably say that more than they would Walter Ray, and it would be shorter to autograph. But I kind of like my name Walter Ray, so I use it.
That's awesome. So it's not a hyphenated. It is actually, it is
My
actually
first and
your.
middle name, yes, like
Oh, okay.
some people use first and middle names, almost like I was born in the South, even though I was born in California.
Got it. Okay. All right. There we go. So I'm not sure if you met this gentleman in your PBA life, but Adam Lemarice, he's a
Yes, I
big
know
PBA
Adam.
fan. Yeah.
Yes,
Says congratulations on your PBA 50 win.
thank you,
And
Adam.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, he usually goes up to the league tournament. I
Mm-hmm.
see him up there. Unfortunately, I'm not invited, so I probably won't be there. I wasn't there last year, so
Mm-hmm.
I did see him down in Jupiter last year when they had the
Mm-hmm.
special event down there. So I think they're going to have a special event down there. I don't know the timing on it. I know there's some, but I think we got the senior tour going on, so I haven't figured out how to be in two places at once. So
Right. Hey, how much fun did you have yesterday at Treasure Lanes?
oh, that was fun. I mean, I was, they invited me to be there for your little no tap tournament that you were having,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a nice little field. I think what they have 60 bowlers there
Mm-hmm.
in the adult division, and then they had a few lanes for the juniors.
Yeah.
So it was, meeting people, taking pictures, signing autographs, and
That was
even
awesome.
selling some of my merchandise. So yeah, it was a fun time.
There you
I
go.
enjoyed it.
I
That's like the easiest thing I could ever do, something like that. It's just
absolutely.
people say, "Oh, how tough is it?" I'm like, I like it. I got no problem with that. I'm I'm not a I I got no problem doing stuff like that. That's
That
easy stuff.
that's incredible. What did you accomplish in your bowling life that made you want to try the tour and think that you were going to be successful?
Well, it was just kind of a gradual thing. I went from that that first year that I was bowling when I was um after I was 19. I was bowling league, and I was averaging about 175. And in January, they made the lanes easy, kind of like what most house shots are today.
Mm,
Of course, back then it was a little less known about it, but and they put way less oil in the lanes. I was using a Black Beauty, a hand-me-down Black Beauty at that time,
mhm,
and I went from averaging 175 to well over 200. In fact, that summer I ended up booking a 186 that year, and that summer I averaged 224 in one league and 217 in another league. And
mhm,
in January I was averaging 175. So it was kind of a gradual thing, and all of a sudden I was shooting 600 every week, and I mean it was like this was really fun. I really enjoyed that, obviously. And then I started bowling a bit more. I started keeping score to pay for some of my bowling. I never worked at
mhm,
the bowling center.
mhm,
And so it was just kind of a gradual thing. And the better I got, the more I bowled, the better I got. And I started bowling local handicap tournaments and no tap tournaments, and I started doing more of that. And then next year I'm averaging well over 215 in the scratch league, and the guy on my team's talking about bowling PBA regional tournaments, and I'm like, well, I'm better than he is. Now, he wasn't a successful PBA bibber, but he did end up winning a title later on. But at that point, he was, kind of a starter. And I'm like, well, so they had an organization in Southern California, the Professional Coast Bowlers, and I joined that and started bowling their tournaments. And then they had bowled a couple of regional tournaments and cashed in one of those. And that,
mhm,
but I was still going to school. I was still going to college,
mhm,
studying physics, minor in mathematics. I got a degree. I've got my BS degree, so I can officially BS in physics,
mhm.
and
There you go.
got a minor in mathematics. And so I was still going to college, and
Mhm,
started bowling local tournaments. I joined the PBA that summer, 1980, and I actually hadn't quite you know, satisfied the rule at that time. You had to average 190 for 2 years, because I averaged 186 the year before. Then I was like, I don't know, 217 or whatever that next year. And but I'd already cashed in a couple regionals, so that was the other requirement to get in. So they let me in the tournament, or let me in the PBA, and um, people look at my stats my first year, 1980, and I think my official stats was on tour, average won $25. And I said, well, they used to have, they used to have a pro-am or the PTQ. I'm trying to figure out how I got $25 because I didn't bowl any national tournaments in 1980, but I did bowl some regionals and I got some money on it. So, but 1981, 82, I won like $2,000 in 81, and I'm still going to school in 82. I made about $10,000 bowling PBA tournaments. I made 2 finals in the national tour, and I was like runner up in the regional player of the year race that year. And so I'd had some success bowling on the national tour, and I thought, well, when I get through with my classes, I'll go out on tour, and went out tour full time in 1983. And so it was just kind of a gradual thing. It wasn't like, oh, I shot a 800 when I was 16 or something like that. It was just kind of a gradual thing. I didn't bowl my first 200 till I was 16. When I do things with kids all the time, I said, because most of them are younger than that, and most of them have bowled higher scores than that. And that's one of the things I asked them. So what's your high game? And they're like 11 years old, and their high game's 230 or something. I said, I didn't bowl my first 200 till I was 16. I did my first 300 when I was when I was 20. So I was kind of a late starter, but and I think a big part of that had to do with my being, a champion horseshoe player, having a good underhand arm swing, and being able to carry over that accuracy from horseshoes and put it into bowling. I wasn't able to bowl 50, 100 games a week like all these young guys did. And the 10 or so games I was able to put in, got me better. And then, like I said, the more I bowled, the better I got, the more I bowled, kind of thing. And I actually started making a lot of money doing that, and managed to, save money to go out on tour.
Oh man, and you exploded on tour.
Well, not really. It was a slow process.
Right. Well, you were player of the year in 86, and then
right. But I went out on tour in 83. And so 1983, I managed to make a couple of shows, which is good. In 84, I didn't make any shows, but I had a couple of 6th place finishes. 85, I only had 1 show.
Okay.
So for the first 3 years on tour, plus, I don't even know the exact number. So, it was like 100 tournaments that I bowled. And I only had 3 TV shows, and, it wasn't bad. I was making money. I was, in 1985, I managed to bowl well enough. Actually, in 1984 and the winter of 1985, they had a point list to go to Japan. The top 14 guys go to Japan. And I bowled well enough in that year and a half, even though I'd only made 1 TV show, consistently making match play and having good finishes. That I was actually, I think I was 13th or 14th on that point list to go to Japan. So I was very fortunate to do that. And so I was very competitive. I just wasn't, doing really, really well. And then in 1986, everything kind of broke loose. I kind of, at the end of 85, I'm like, what's going on here? I'm making a lot of finals, but I'm just not doing what I needed to do in match play. And I just kind of decided I needed to bowl in match play, kind of like I did in qualifying. And all of a sudden, I started making a lot more shows. It was a gradual progress where you get a little better. But it's amazing how a little bit makes a big difference on those finishing positions. It's like instead of being in the middle or the, just above the middle, that little difference, it puts you up a lot. And that's kind of what happened with me. So
yeah. Did you? How old were you when you developed the style that you had? The one where you're, obviously you are not, perpendicular to the foul line, and you're, you throw it so hard and you kind of almost get out of it. So how did you develop that style?
How I started bowling.
Okay.
But I don't think what I do is that bad. I encourage people to have a good angle in their body, and encourage them to, I tell them I accelerate through the shot, whether I'm trying to hook the ball or whether I'm trying to slow or trying to throw it straighter.
Mhm.
And I know I don't hook the ball as much as these kids do, but pretty much I say I put 100% into every shot I throw. To me, it's a
Mhm.
lot easier to repeat that as opposed to, putting 70% into your shot every shot. So that's
I
just
remember in Go ahead, I'm sorry.
that's just kind of, as far as, my throwing the ball. And it's funny because my left arm whips behind my back
Mhm.
and I don't even notice. And I don't think of myself as very limber.
Mhm.
So it's kind of interesting to see that, that my left arm whips about as much as it does.
Yeah. I remember in '03, you're bowling in Vegas, you made the show, you're bowling against, I believe, Patrick Allen. You're opening up the lane just like I've never seen that. I haven't seen that since. How hard is that to do to open up the lane for you like that?
I first came out on tour, I really didn't know how to throw the ball straighter.
Mhm.
And not that I ever hooked the ball an excessive amount,
Mhm.
but back in 1983, the rev rates were way lower on tour. So
Mhm.
my rev rate, which is probably about the same now as it was then, um, I was probably in the middle of the pack about guys who hooked the ball, but I tended to hook the ball more
Mhm.
than I went straighter. And I loved playing on B squad, especially the night squad, where you
Mhm.
play fifth and sixth arrow.
Mhm.
Um, I really didn't like bowling on the fresh, and I think that was part of my issue with, not doing well in the later parts of the tournament because the lanes didn't break down as much.
Mhm.
Um, so you would have, on Wednesday we had the two squads. A squad bowled 6 games, B squad bowled 6 games, A squad came back and bowled 6 more games, B squad would bowl 6 more games, and they
Mhm.
never re-rolled the lanes. Now, of
Mhm.
course, they're using different balls, rev rates are lower, so they would start, second arrow or whatever, and by the end of the day, they're playing fifth and sixth arrow. And I
Mhm.
always loved playing that inside line like that. It's a
Mhm.
totally different thing than how the kids play fifth and sixth arrow day because they play sixth arrow and they're throwing it to the first arrow. We never did
Mhm.
that. We threw it, you're playing sixth arrow and you're getting out to about 15 or so and
Mhm.
playing really what's fallback where the ball doesn't have a lot of angle into the pocket.
Right.
But I loved playing that. I was pretty good at that. I learned how to drift around the ball return back then. The
Mhm.
idea of starting in front of the ball return was kind of foreign. Never saw anybody do that.
Mhm.
So it was just a different environment back then. And I remember going to tournaments, the PBA tournaments, and I'm watching some of these older guys, because I was young, I was 23,
Mhm.
and I'm like watching Dick Weber and Nelson Burton Jr. and Ernie Schlegel and Roy Buckley and a few of the other guys that threw the ball pretty straight. And I'm like, how do they strike? It didn't make any sense to me, but they were
Mhm.
very accurate, and they could strike a lot.
Mhm.
So um, after having a couple tournaments where I had trouble keeping a white, plastic ball on the right side of a head pin,
Mhm.
it's like I learned how to throw the ball a little bit straighter, and I became a better bowler when I learned how to do that.
Yeah.
And I think I think that happens with a lot of younger players, even now, even today.
Mhm.
And they all can strike a lot, but it's like they need to wait for that lane condition to develop for them. And when they
Mhm.
learn how to play those different parts of the lanes, that's what makes Anthony Simonson so good.
Mhm.
And EJ Tackett, they can play up the lane. And most of these guys that are rolling on tour nowadays, they can play up the lane. They'll use a urethane ball and cut their side rotation down so they can play up the lane and play the pattern for the first couple of games. And then, they make a giant step left and then open up the lane and throw it to the right. And when I do my clinics, I say, there's a reason why these guys hook the ball. It's because
Mhm.
it works. If it didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it.
Mhm.
So I've got no problem with guys hooking the ball. But there's an advantage to be able to play the ball straighter and playing a part of the lane like that also. And for me, for a long time, I was able to do that and do it very well. And
Mhm.
I remember guys are, how do you do that? They're all trying to hook the ball, and I'm like, I got a great reaction to what I'm doing, and I can hit my target. That helped. It's, but I think unfortunately the mental part of it, people say, oh, you got to hook the ball to strike. That's not totally true. Billy Hardwick back in 1968 or 69 set the
Mhm.
8 game record and he threw it really straight and he shot like 500 over for the 8 games.
Mhm.
So you don't have to
Wow.
hook the ball a lot to strike. It gives you
Mhm.
better angle. I think it gives you better carry, but it's amazing that you can actually strike going straighter.
Yeah. Absolutely. What was your best moment on tour?
Well, I've won a lot of tournaments, so
Yep.
it's anytime
Yep.
you win, that's a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would, when people ask me what was my favorite win, I always go to my first one because
Mm-hmm.
without the first win, you're not sure what's going to happen. Also, the first TV show I was on. I mean, those are both fun, exciting things, and but any tournament win is a very good thing.
That's awesome. What would you say is your worst moment on tour?
Well, I don't know if there'd be a worst moment. There's probably a
Sure.
lot of them.
Okay.
The years that I struggled a little bit, and actually my last 10 or 12 years on tour were not very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, or whatever you want to call it, there wasn't a lot of requirement, not necessarily requirement, but to be on tour did require bowling 30 weeks. When I first went on tour, if you wanted to be on tour, you had to bowl 20 to 30 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
My later years, the tour was kind of a lot different, and I could bowl and be a touring player and bowl 6 weeks or 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of sad that that ended up happening. And then I was also bowling a senior tour, so I knew that being competitive, I'd have a better edge if I bowled tournaments. And even though I may not have bowled as well on the regular tour, I knew it would help keep me more competitive bowling against the seniors, who I definitely had a lot better chance against.
Mm-hmm.
The younger players just do things that I just have trouble doing, and I got to be where I just wasn't as accurate as I used to be. So anytime you don't do well,
Mm-hmm.
you throw a bad shot to lose a turn, and I did that more than once. Anytime you do stuff like that, it's very disappointing and a struggle, and you're not happy about it.
Right. So I know that one of your goals was to have more first place than seconds. Did you actually accomplish that?
Not on the national tour,
Not
and
on
I
national.
honestly don't even know what that is on the senior tour.
Okay.
And I bet money that I have more seconds than I have firsts, even in the regional program. And I've
Mm-hmm.
won a lot of, I've won a lot of all of those. So
Right.
I think I ended up being 47 and 47 on the national tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly don't know what it is on the senior tour. They don't really keep track of those stats. And on the regional program, there's no way I know what it is, but I know I have a lot of seconds. So
Okay. So let's go back to when you didn't have any titles at all and you're on tour and you're doing whatever you're doing. You're you want to be a successful professional bowler. You obviously won 47 titles, but how many titles would you say that was a number that would be satisfactory to you, that to say, you know what, I had a pretty good career? Because who knows that whoever thinks they're going to win 47
I
titles.
think when you start, everybody's different. Some people go out on tour and say, I want to be player of the year.
Mm-hmm,
I actually didn't do that.
mm-hmm,
I honestly didn't. I thought it would be really cool to make a living bowling.
mm-hmm,
And I knew I was very, very good at horseshoes at the time. I'd already been world champion a couple of times. I didn't know if my talent for playing horseshoes would translate over to bowling, and it apparently did.
mm-hmm,
I knew I was good, but I didn't know how good I could be, because when I first went on a tour, I didn't consider myself the best bowler in Southern California.
mm-hmm,
Like I said, we had those organizations there, and Mark Baker was bowling, and we had other guys, Fred Connor and Jay Robinson. Let's see, Butch Soper. I'm trying to remember all these guys, and I know I'm forgetting a bunch. Larry Gray, Joe Staten. There was a bunch of guys that were really, really good, and I was
mm-hmm,
decent. And for whatever reason, I was able to you know, do okay on the regular tour, and managed to get a little better and a little better, and then I became a serious force. So um, it was so when I first started, I honestly don't know. If I had said 5 titles, I'd probably would have been. I think I would have been happy with that, but.
mm-hmm.
I don't really think I had any inkling of being a player of the year. Because I knew the competition was so good. There were so many good players, and I really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get up to that point. And
Mm-hmm.
fortunately, 4 years into being on tour, I managed to do that. Had a breakout year, and everything went well. And the
Mm-hmm.
next year, I was right there in the thick of running the player of the year. And, for that 25-year stretch from 1986 to 2010, I think I was out of the top 5, maybe 3 years. If you looked at the year-end stats. So it was a very, very, very good run. I was, I cannot argue with, or be disappointed on that. And obviously having 47 titles was, even when I was getting to 30 something titles, I had people say, "Oh, you're gonna get to 47 times," like, or get more than Earl Anthony. I'm like, I doubt it, because I'm going to get over 40 here, and Earl Anthony retired when he was 45. There was very few guys bowling over 40 years of age who were really successful on tour when I first came out on tour. So I really thought, when I was bowling on tour, I thought I'd retire when I was 40. I really thought that. And fortunately, I was still bowling well, and continue to bowl, and, and then I probably should have retired a few years before I did, but, like I said, it wasn't a huge commitment to bowl, bowl 6 or 7 weeks a year. And it wasn't super, it wasn't a horrible situation in that respect. Had I bowled 25 or 30 tournaments a year or continue to be on tour and bowling the way I was, I probably would have retired 5 or 6 years earlier. Or more.
Yeah. Did you have anybody that you beat a lot on TV or in match play?
Well, in match play, I think, we were fairly even. I didn't really keep track of that. But, when you bowl, I'm going to guess Pete Weber and I probably bowled each other 400 times in match play. And that's a total guess. But, we made match play a lot, so we'd make it 20 times, a year bowling each other. And at first, he was better than I was, so he was probably beating me more. And then later on, I got to be a little better than him. I probably beat him a little bit more. But honestly, I bet we were 50-50 on those kind of matches. Now, we only bowled each other 10 times on TV. And that's not really a lot. I'm a math guy. 10 is not a very good number to judge, your competition against somebody. Now, match play, if you went back and looked at all the matches we had, the 400 matches or whatever we had, and I don't know the exact number, but that would tell you something more. So if I was 55% and he was 45%, I'd say that'd make a difference. But like I said, I bet we're close to 50-50. If one of us beat each other 5 or 10 more times than the other guy, and that's not that statistical. When you're, if you flip a coin 400 times, you're going to get 205 heads and 195 tails or something like that. It's just, that's part of statistics, And so when you do it 10 times, and he's the most I ever bowled against anybody on TV, and I managed to beat him 8 times, 6 of them for titles, which is kind of absolutely amazing when you think about it, because Pete's a great bowler, and just things happen. He maybe threw a bad shot, got a bad break, things happen, and I was very fortunate that I managed to win all those titles against him. But I had other guys. I think Dave Houston was 5-0 against me. Norm Duke had a pretty good career against me on TV. But again, we're only bowling 5, 6, 7 times, and that's it. It's not like you bowled each other 50 times on TV. If that was the case, that'd be a different story. But 10 times is really significant. They're not that significant. Guys say, "Oh, I got your number. I bowled you 3 times, and I beat you all 3 times." But that 3 times doesn't really mean anything. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. So number 8 was who beat you a lot on TV or match play. You basically covered that. So let me ask you this. What was it like the last telecast on ABC at St. Clair Bowl? Well,
that was obviously a very emotional tournament, because ABC was such a big deal for the bowling tour. And the thing is I ended up bowling Pete, and we were both headed for that $2 million career earnings. We hadn't got there yet, but we were getting close. And I think he was probably just barely ahead of me. But that was very interesting, that there was this race to $2 million. And I think I was the 10th guy to get to $1 million. And now Pete and I were going for $2 million. And it was just, and Pete lives near there. because I was in St. Clair Bowl at across the river at Fairview, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's from that area. His dad's there, and his dad was a great guy, and obviously cheering for his son. And I managed to beat Pete, and then I didn't go over the $2 million mark, but it got me really close. And then that weekend they had a regional at the same bowling center, and I beat Pete again for that regional title, and that put me over the $2 million mark. It was kind of fun.
Yeah. And you finished over $5 million. Is that right?
I'm not sure, because I haven't seen a career money list in quite a while.
Okay.
I would assume it's over $5 million, but I don't know. I haven't seen any official figures. People ask me, how many tournaments have you won? Well, the PBA tells me I've won 131 titles. I take their word for it because I don't have it written down somewhere.
Yeah, and seriously, Walter Ray, congratulations on everything you've accomplished. I mean that from my heart.
Yes. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's obviously, like I said, every win is awesome, and it's been a great career.
Yeah. All right, so let's go back to that great career, 47 titles, and we're gonna have a little bit of fun here because a PBA telecast is usually a step ladder. So we're gonna do what are your top
that weren't.
What's that?
There were some that weren't.
Right.
Some they did a bracket, the elimination bracket. They did that a few times, and
what did you prefer?
I actually prefer neither one.
Okay.
It would be nice if the guy who knocked down the most pins with bonus pins at the end of the tournament was declared the winner.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of a shame, that they got these elimination tournaments introduced into the professional organization. They actually tried that back in 1961 or 62 when they first started having PBA tournaments. And the players, they basically decided this really isn't the best way to run a tournament. There's too much luck involved in who you draw and, bowling the right guy at the right time and all that. The guys that get there, the guys that win are good bowlers, don't get me wrong. But, they're not always the best bowler of the week. I mean, this last week, perfect example, Andrew Anderson leads a tournament. He gets knocked out. He finishes tied for ninth. It just, and people say, oh, it's a lot more exciting format. Well, that's nice, but do you watch a golf tournament? That's the format the golf use. They don't use elimination match play. They got one tournament a year they do that. It's not. I'm a math guy. Statistically, you're going to have the better players are going to make the shows when you have total pins and a lot more games. Who would you rather? If I was bowling Jason Bomani or EJ Tackett or Anthony Simonson, would I rather bowl them one frame, 10 frames, or 100 or 10 games or 100 games? I'd rather bowl them one frame because I have a better chance of beating them in one frame than I do in a 1-game match or a 5-game match or a 10-game match or a 100-game match. The more we bowl, the better they're because they're better bowlers than I am. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, a 1-frame match would be exciting, even a 1-game match, but the more frames you bowl, the better chance those better players have.
Right.
So.
All right. So, but what are the, I guess, top 5 titles that you have that defined your career, in your opinion?
Well, all the majors, I guess. But again, my first title, without the first title, you don't know. But I won the U.S. Open a couple times, and I led the one U.S. Open by 500 something pins and finished second in that. So it's also tournaments that you don't win. And I think, unfortunately, people forget about that because of the step ladder. The guy who wins a tournament isn't always the best bowler of the tournament. He bowled the best that day or got the breaks. I mean, unfortunately, that's what happened the other day. He got some serious breaks to win that tournament. Or anybody says anything different, I'm like, okay, whatever. Not that he's not a good bowler, because he's a great bowler. And I'm probably going to win tournaments. We're probably going to win more tournaments. But he got a lot of good breaks that week. I mean, that day. That was amazing.
Oh yeah, definitely. What was your favorite tour stop?
Well, I enjoyed bowling Las Vegas at Showboat. I really didn't gamble a whole lot back then, and I don't gamble these days at all. But I just enjoyed bowling that tournament. Big, huge tournament. You know, we'd be using 70 lanes, so there'd be a 420 man field, and it was just it was one of the also kind of one of the first tournaments that I went to. My first PBA tournament as a member, I bowled in a big regional tournament where they combined the Southern California organization, the Northern California organization, the PCCB, and the PCB, which is the Southern California, and the regional tournament. And those three organizations combined for a regional tournament. And that was the very first tournament I bowled as a member. It was during the summertime, and they had 420 bowlers or something like that. They actually used all the lanes. They had 106 lanes, so I guess 424 bowlers is what they had because it was like two squads. But they used all 106 lanes because they had 70 lanes, and then there was a little bar, and they had 36 more lanes.
Sure.
But I enjoyed bowling at the Showboat, and I had a very good. I won a couple tournaments there. I remember making the show one time, and I didn't even know I made it because it was kind of spread out. I was like 8th place or something like that. Shot a 269 my last game. I'm like, well, that was a good finish. I think I might have shot 800 the last 3 games, and somebody says, "Oh, you made the show." I'm like, "What?" And turned out that one of the other guys shot like a 190 game, and so with the bonus pins, I went around him, and I'm like, "Oh, well, that's cool." So yep. But I just enjoyed bowling there. It was a unique, house. It was like built in sections so that there was a little bit different going on throughout the house. But the other favorite stop was probably Erie, Pennsylvania. They had the tournament up there, and I mean the fans there were just huge bowling fans, and that was really enjoyable. Coming from California, where there was definitely bowling fans, but when you get to the Northeast, and Michigan, Wisconsin, New York, they just in Ohio, then you just get the bowling fans are just they're more of them. They're knowledgeable. Walking around in public, people know who you were. We're bowling the very first tournament. I'm in my RV watching the local ABC show, the Good Morning Show with Kathy and Regis or whatever it was back then. And they cut in on that show to show Bob Learn shooting the 10th frame of the first game because he had the front 9 strikes. So the local station preempted the national show to show the what was going on.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah, and that was the atmosphere at that bowling center. I mean, it was always packed. We had great crowds there, and I had a phenomenal session. I think it was the 8 tournaments we bowled there. I made the show 7 out of the 8 years. The only one I didn't make was the one Bob Learn shot the huge scores on. I couldn't strike enough that week.
Yeah. So how cool was it? The arena show, the very first arena show, you were on it. And I mean, I think
the most fun I ever had not winning.
That's what I was going to say. And
it was in Erie, and the fans yelling and screaming, and it was electric. It was something that we don't get a chance to get a part of very often in a bowling center, because you get a few hundred bowlers or a few hundred fans, and which is really nice. And they might get 500 fans at a bowling center sometimes, and they can make a little bit of noise. But when you get 4,000 or 5,000, that makes a bigger difference. And I really enjoyed that. But like I said, it was the most fun I ever had not winning.
How frustrating was it in 2002, you're bowling in Siena College and somebody flashes a camera right in your approach? That
was definitely not a good thing.
No.
It obviously distracted me. Whether or not I would have won the game, I don't know.
Right.
And then I look bad because I'm yelling and screaming at these people. Well, they had like 3 people in wheelchairs right next to us. They weren't the ones that it was somebody else that was sitting just next to them that had taken a flash picture, and I don't think they were bowlers. They probably didn't understand that their camera had to flash on. I'm sure he didn't do it on purpose.
Sure.
But it definitely distracted me, and the announcers didn't even know it because they're sitting way over there. That's like, well, something happened. We don't know what happened, and here I am yelling and screaming and cursing, and and then it, people thought I was yelling at the people in the wheelchair, and that wasn't really the case. So some people thought, I had a really bad vision of me, and I don't blame them, because I definitely. Um, I definitely, said some things I probably shouldn't have said, but that was not a good thing.
Well, the only thing I heard you say was something wrong with you, but I mean, other than that, I
Well, I
didn't.
said it more than that.
Oh yeah,
I said what the, and
right, right,
and of course ESPN had to show that in slow replay, so you could tell what I said.
yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it was oh well, stuff happens.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. So we got a fan that the first show that he saw was in Gable House, and you bowled Mark Roth, and
Hmm.
yeah. So first show I remember watching with you was '92 in Erie. I remember meeting you in 2015, telling you that, and that was a long time ago. Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
So.
Hmm.
And hello, thanks for watching. You're watching Flush in the Pocket, presented by Brunswick, sponsored by Just in Time Recreation. Check them out at justintimebowl.com. We're chatting with the great Walter Ray Williams Jr. So, what would you say was a tour stop that you were not a fan of because maybe you struggled or whatever?
Well, see, that was the other thing. If I did struggle at a place, I wanted to figure it out the next year. So um, I really enjoyed going pretty much everywhere we ever went. I honestly can't think of a bowling tournament that I just did not want to be there at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we got good receptions pretty much everywhere we got, wherever we went, and and I definitely had places I didn't bowl as well at, but it was always like the next year I want to do better there.
Sure. Where did the PBA never go that you wish they had gone to?
I don't know. I mean we've been all over the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly, we didn't bowl in Minnesota in the in the regular tour. We had a senior tournament there a few years ago, more than a few years ago. But as far as liking to go there, I mean, it's just kind of surprising that we didn't. Because it's a nice cold state during the wintertime. Of course, that's the other part. You got to be in a nice cold state, and traveling in the wintertime is not as simple as it is in the summertime. So, but bowling being kind of a winter sport for most of the country, which is something I didn't understand because I grew up in California, and it's like, people are like, "Oh, I'm just like, we're gonna bowl the summer league." And I go, "No, I don't bowl in the summer. Why not?" I go, "Well, we just don't bowl in the summer." It's like, "Why not?" I'm like, "I like to bowl. I'm gonna bowl in the summer."
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when I get back east, and the winters there are a lot more harsh than they are out in California. And I can kind of understand it where people they don't want to be inside in a bowling center in the summertime. But if you like bowling, you like bowling. I don't see the difference. I would bowl year round and everything. I don't
Oh,
stop
sure.
bowling during the summer. I like to bowl.
Right. So this gentleman says that you won in '93 in Erie, which absolutely you did. What happened in '93 that made you just like turn it on and hey, 7 titles and you almost tied Mark Roth?
That's hard to say. The reactive balls came out, and the first reactive ball came out in 1991,
Mm,
and the pros didn't even know about it or use it until
mm,
the last tournament of the year at the Touring Players Championship, and Tony Westlake was using it. And Tony Westlake hooked the ball a touch more than I did, but not a
mm,
lot.
mm,
And he, on that show, he's hooking the ball a lot. And we're like, whoa, what's this? And the next year or when the next, in January, the next tournament starts, a month and a half later, a bunch of guys had those balls, the Excalibur, and it's like, oh,
mhm,
wow, this is something new. Um, and I was on the Ebonite staff at that time, and it
mhm,
took them a little while. They finally came out with one. I did all right. And
mhm,
my bad years were 89, 90, and 90, 92.
mhm,
91 I did okay. And that's
mhm,
before the reactive ball came out.
Mhm.
And then 92, the reactive ball, the reactive ball started coming out. And it might have been that I could have had a better year had Ebonite come out with one before they did. And then they finally did. But in 93, they came out with the Crush R. And I just, that ball worked so well for me, it was ridiculous. And I people say without the reactive balls, I wouldn't have anything. And I'm like, well, maybe not. But it was, because I was player of the year in 1986. And if I remember right, they had urethane back then.
Yep.
And in 93, when I had my great year,
Mhm.
I won a tournament using a plastic ball. And it
Yep.
wasn't, I was the only one on TV using a plastic ball. And
Yep.
I'm like, I got a great shot. I led the tournament using a plastic ball. And I'm like, I'm going to use that ball. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And I ended up winning the tournament. And, so I think I'm the last guy to actually win with the plastic ball when it wasn't, part of the deal, that because they had some of the plastic ball tournaments or,
Yep. You beat Joe Firpo in Homestead, Florida.
Yes.
And so what was it like when because in 93 you also what three or four people have shot 300 at you. I think it was
Well, it
four.
wasn't just 1 year, but yeah,
Right.
I had, I
right.
think Johnny Petraglia did in 94.
Mhm.
And he tells the story, he's like, Aaron Bowling and Walt Teray is like, I can't miss. That's kind of his thought process. And it's like I missed early, and he's like, oh well, now I can shoot 260 or something like that, or but he just kept striking, obviously because he shot 300. And then Steve Hoskins pulled a 300 against me in Rochester. And I think we both had the front 5 or 6, and of course he kept going and I didn't. And then Norm Duke shot 300 against me, and we're playing on the shark pattern, which is a pattern you're not supposed to be playing outside. And he's playing like a 3 board, and I'm playing second arrow, and he shot 300 against me. Of course, after he did, he jumped up on top, and fortunately, he's not a huge guy.
Yeah.
And then Wes Malott did it against me in one of the King of the Hill matches that they had.
Right,
I think he
yep.
did it against Parker. So I think Parker and I both have 4 300 full against us. 3 on in tournament competition and the one in the quote exhibition match, or whatever you want to call it, the special matches.
Right.
The only difference is Parker actually has a 300 on TV, and I don't. I had a 299.
Right.
I got a couple of 280 somethings. I had a 299 with a weak 10 in Long Island in 93, and then what was it? Well, in 2006, I had the front 10 against Pete and left a stone 7 pin. I was in Japan. That was disappointing because that was a tournament that gave me my 42nd title. So then I officially passed Earl Anthony. Of course, then later on they gave him 2 more titles for the Masters wins. But at that point they weren't counting those as PBA titles. So it was a really good event. And one of the times I did beat Pete for a title. But it just, for whatever reason, I never did manage to do that. And I think I'm maybe just behind Parker in the most 300s in PBA competition.
There you go.
Like 110 or something like that.
Right. But in 93, what was it like to watch Brian Davis do what he did? Shoot that 299.
Yeah, I mean, that was, that's the thing. I mean, Brian bowled well. He bowled great that week. I think I led the tournament. And I shot 268. He shot 299. Left a 2 pin the 10 franc or the fill ball. And here is a guy who nobody ever heard of before, and I don't think he ever made a show after that. I think he made a couple of finals after that. But it was just, it's the way things go, right?
Yeah. So what would you say is a PBA rule that you agree with that others might not?
I'm not, I'm not, I don't know. I can't really think of that one. That one, I mean, I think the PBA's got a lot of good rules. I don't agree with all of them though, but I think most of the rules I like them.
Is there a PBA rule you disagree with?
I disagree with what they've done as far as the urethane rule that they've done the last couple of years, and the 2-year-old rule. I think they just mishandled. I think they basically mishandled the urethane policy rule. But
Mhm.
you know, and it's not like I use urethane a lot either.
Mhm.
It's just I don't agree with making a rule for a specific type of ball, and they call it urethane like, and a reactive ball is made out of urethane.
Mhm.
So and technically, I've got a really old. Well, it's a really old ball. It's new for me because I drove this last summer. But it's a Black Diamond. It was
Mhm.
made probably. I know they first made them in 1968, so it was made after in 1968 or after. But it's probably 90 something hardness, and they had to make a special rule for somebody to be able to use that ball for spares. You can't use it on a strike ball though, which
Mhm.
it just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand, the thinking on that. That I can't use a Columbia U-Dot or a Firebolt that was made 1986 or 87.
Mhm.
It doesn't make any sense to me. We never had any issues with balls going soft. If they
Mhm.
got issues with balls going soft these days, they should throw them out. And if a
Mhm.
player gets thrown out enough times, then the player gets thrown out. They had a rule, they just didn't use it, didn't enforce it. I really disagree with how they handled that. But I know a few guys on tour don't like urethane,
Mhm.
which is kind of odd because urethane actually can make the lane a lot better. It
Mhm.
makes it tougher for somebody like me who throws it straighter. If I'm following guys that hook the ball, it actually makes it
Mhm.
more challenging for somebody like me who throws it straighter.
Mhm.
But if you hook the ball, urethane is going to be your best friend because it's going to tame the lane down and it's going to make it nice.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and it's just, there's so much misinformation out there. It's ridiculous. And if,
No. Yeah.
but again, they used to be a PBA hardness rule of 75, and then they went with the USBC rule, and then it was down to 72. And, then they came out with another rule of 78. Again, it was specific for urethane, which I didn't agree with.
Mhm.
So whatever. I don't bowl on tour anymore, so it doesn't really affect me, but
Right.
I disagree with it.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
some of the rules do affect us, in the 50 tour and the regional tour and stuff. But I'm fortunate. I'm on staff. I can get bowling balls. That there's some players that they don't have unlimited access to other bowling balls.
Mhm. So, what is not a PBA rule that should be a PBA rule, in your opinion?
I I I think they could probably modify some rules, but right now I can't think of what
Sure.
they are.
All right.
I know they're having issues with the timing. How much time you can take.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's just again, it's a matter of enforcement. Um,
Mhm.
I know that in tournaments, the guys when they're bowling qualifying, it's a pair to the left and a pair to the right for lane courtesy.
Mhm.
There are some guys who like more than a pair to the left and a pair to the right.
Mhm.
They get distracted for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And and the thing is they shouldn't be allowed to do that. They should be required to bowl when it's their turn to bowl. And
Mhm.
I've seen guys back off the approach because somebody stepped up two pair away,
Mhm.
and I'm like, they shouldn't do that. It's
Mhm.
not fair to the other players in the tournament that they have to abide by the rule, but these guys don't.
Mhm.
I totally irritates me.
Mhm.
And you know, I've seen superstars do that.
Mhm.
I had a player who who's a pretty good player here in Florida
Mhm.
who yelled at me one time because I got on the approach while he was on the approach, you know, 2 pair away.
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm following the rules. You're not.
Yeah.
But he yelled at me, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not the one who's not following the rule.
Mhm. Yeah. League, we only get one lane. That's it.
Well, yeah, then the league that's a little most handicap leagues and even some of the scratch leagues they do,
Mhm.
and the pace of play is a lot slower in the PBA tournaments. There's no doubt about it. But
Mhm.
the pace of play is extremely slow compared to what it used to be. We threw less strikes back in the early 80s than they do now, and they
Mhm.
take half hour longer to bowl 6 games.
Sure.
And that's because they don't bowl when it's their turn. They don't. They're taking too long to bowl.
Mhm.
And a lot of it they learn in college. It's the team. the team concept is you have to have a pre-shot routine. You got to be this. You got to be totally ready to bowl, and then you take all your time. You wipe your ball off, and you get up there, and you finally bowl. And when you get up on there, you don't just get up and go. For me, when I started on tour, the three best bowlers on tour were Earl Anthony, Mark Roth, and Marshall Holman. Three of the quickest bowlers you're going to see. And I'm like, just get up and bowl. You should know what you're going to do. When you step up there. I'm looking at a target. I know where my feet are going to go. Get up and do your thing. These guys that stand there for 10 seconds trying to figure out what they're going to do. I'm like, I don't know how they do it. I
Yeah, you get guys like Pete who is looking at his target as
Pete's very quick. Yeah,
absolutely.
Pete's very quick, but there's a bunch of guys that are really, really slow, and they're good bowlers. But I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm not super fast when I play horseshoes. I'm sort of quick, but I'm also not super fast because it is what it is. But I've seen players that were really, really slow, and that also was irritating. And the guys that are fast, that doesn't bother me. The problem is in bowling. When you're a slow bowler. I had a friend of mine tell me that guy bowled on tour, won several titles. He's like, if I bowl really slow, I don't have to wait when I go to my next pair. I was quick. I would always have to wait when I go to my next pair. I learned last 10 or 15 years to take my time and not always be in a hurry to get up and bowl. So I would miss my turn to bowling because the guys around me are too slow. So I would do that because, especially as an older guy, I get stiff really easy. I don't need that. So I would actually take my time and not necessarily get up and bowl. But I like to get up and bowl. That's the thing. I like to get up and, get on with it. But I think the slow bowling, and I know they're trying to address it, they just need to enforce the rule. They don't enforce it during qualifying and match play. That's part of the problem.
Sure. So speaking of Pete, you guys left the tour at the same time. He did it, and then you announced your retirement rather quickly. Did he inspire you to do that, or why
Actually, I said I was going to retire the week before.
Oh.
I had won a regional tournament the weekend before, and I said at that tournament I was going to retire. That I was going to bowl the World Championship, and that's going to be my last tournament. I just didn't call the press and make a big deal out of it. And then the commissioner kind of got mad that we didn't tell him. I'm like, well, I kind of did. I announced it at the week before, and the regional director knew, and it was very strange. And then they made a big deal about Pete, and so they kind of made a big deal about me, I guess. And then they made a big deal about Pete again 2 weeks ago. So I don't understand. I mean, it's like they totally forgot that he retired a couple of years ago. Or whatever.
Yeah.
and people say, "Oh, you retired, so you don't bowl anymore." I said, "No, I retired from the regular tour. I did bowl the tournament champions, and I at the time I wasn't going to take anybody's spot away from the tournament. And I was in the neighborhood because I was bowling. I was going to be at the Hall of Fame, So I thought, you know what, I'll go ahead and bowl that tournament. And then I didn't bowl very well. And I'm like, you know what, I really didn't need to bowl against these guys. I had a tournament host offer to pay my expenses and try to get me a commissioner exemption for the tournament. And I said, you know what, I don't need to do that. I don't need to take a spot away from one of these other players. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't. I have to bowl my absolute best to get to cash. And those guys out there on the tour are very, very good. They don't get enough recognition. They are very, very good. That's all I got to say about that. I'm decent. I used to be way better. If I was like my prime of my game, going even straighter, I think I could do it right against these guys. But today, I don't hit my target well enough, and their ball hits so much better than mine. It's silly. And if I can't hit the pocket, I'm done. And that's pretty much the case. My reaction is not that great, and I don't throw the ball well enough, and the pins kind of laugh at my ball. It's a kind of a bad combination. And I get people all the time, oh, you should be bowling. I'm like, no, I shouldn't.
Well, you know this guy, John Stites. He says, "How many times can you retire?"
Some guys
Yeah.
can retire a lot.
Yeah.
I
Brett
mean,
Favre.
another Ryan Simonelli did that. He retired and then he came back out on tour. So I get that. It was just kind of funny. They made a big deal about it, and then they made a big deal about it. It's just whatever.
So I wanted to ask you, you were with Ebonite and then you were with Brunswick for a long time, and then you win the 2001 PBA National Championship, and you're a member of Hammer staff. How did, and then Mo Rich, how did you get to join Hammer and then Mo Rich, and then of course come back to Brunswick?
Well, okay. So 1986, I was player of the year, and Ebonite came up to me and asked me to be on staff. Give me, pay me some money and stuff. Well, that's a good idea. I like that. I pretty much thought I could use about anything, and I did all right. Bowled with their stuff for quite a few years, and I made a lot of shows. I think I have the record for the most TV shows in a row without a title. I think it was like 25 from 1988 to 1991. Made a lot of shows, never won, and then I finally won in Japan in 91. So for those 4 years, I struggled on TV. I bowled really well and just didn't win. So, and then I kept asking for a raise, and they're like, "Yeah, you gotta win some tournaments. You gotta win some tournaments." And 93 comes along, and I win 7 tournaments. And I'm like, "Well, okay, you're gonna pay me more money, right?" They said, "We can't do that because we're gonna have product registration." I'm like, "Okay, I don't need to do this then. If you're not gonna pay me, I'm not gonna be on your staff anymore. If you're not gonna pay me as much as I think I'm worth." And so I was for the next 12 months, I was not basically on a staff, and I pretty much would use different stuff every week. And I made like 14 shows or something like that in that 12-month period. So finally, Brunswick gave me a really nice offer. And so I was on staff with them for the next how many years? And I was player of the year, 96, 97, 98, 99. I won a couple tournaments, and in 2000, I didn't bowl very well in the winter and spring or summer or something like that. And then the fall comes along, and I win back-to-back tournaments, and they said, "We're going to get rid of you." And I'm like, "You're going to what?" "I just won back-to-back tournaments." "Well, we're going to get rid of you." And I'm like, I was really surprised, and I thought they were kind of kidding. And yeah, they got rid of me. They had a huge staff. They went from 13 to 3. So I'm like, okay. So I got together with Favol. I was on their staff for Hammer, and so the next year, 2001, and then unfortunately, whatever reason, they ended up going out of business, owing me like $30,000 that year. So I'm not on staff with them anymore. And so for the next how many years, I really wasn't on any staff. I had a TV contract with Mo Rich for a while. But pretty much getting a contract, nobody would give me a contract. I'm in my 40s, so I sort of understand it, but I'm bowling pretty well. I'm like, I'm like one of the top players on tour, until 2010. So 2009, I finally get a contract with a company. It was AMF Global 900. At that time, they were the same. They were together. I got to be I was player of the year that year, 2009, 2010 season. The next season comes around, they didn't product register, so I can't be on their staff. I'm like, okay. So the next year, Track signed me. So I'm like, good. Now I start not bowling as well. Okay. So, but the CEO told me personally to my face, "We're going to keep you forever." The next year, I'm off staff. I'm like, okay. And it was sometime after that, Brunswick re-signed me. Not nearly for as much as they were paying me back in the 90s, but I've been on staff with Brunswick since then. They're obviously a good company.
Yeah.
And most of the companies are good, but I kind of laugh at, people talk about, businesses, being true and loyal to your company. Like, well, sometimes a company needs to do that to the players or their employees. I've been very fortunate to do what I do and make a good living at it. And I can't really complain about it. It's just kind of interesting. And this last year, the shoe company I was with decided they didn't want to pay me. So
No. Listen, I appreciate you telling me that. I got to be, you know, if it wasn't for Brunswick, I would have never been able to have thrown shots in front of you. That's one of the best things I've ever done. And I remember you coming up to me and, obviously disabled one step, whatever. And you were like, well, can you try 4 steps? And because of you, who you are, I was like, absolutely, I will try it. And, shows that I definitely made the right call doing 1 step and throwing it. But,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean everybody's different, and that's when I do my clinics and stuff.
Mhm.
I try to work with what they've got. Not everybody is able to do. I can't do what the kids do.
Mhm.
So I don't expect anybody that if you can't have a super high backswing and you can't get
Mhm.
your wrist in a super strong position, I get it. And have fast feet, and so
Mhm.
I get people that are older and stuff, and that's I said, how are your knees? How can your legs okay, especially your sliding leg, and that's
Mhm.
because those are things I like to look at, get a good knee bend and stuff. But if you got a knee issue, it's hard to have a good knee bend. It just is.
Mhm.
I don't have near the knee bend that I had when I was in my 20s. It's
Mhm.
still pretty decent.
Mhm.
And I wear a knee brace when I bowl. I could probably bowl without it. And there are a lot of times that I'll bowl in shorts and people are like, oh, what's wrong with your knee? I'm like, well, I've been wearing this thing for like 25 years. The difference
Mhm.
is I wore it under my slack so you didn't see it. So,
Mhm.
and fortunately, I've never had any surgeries on my knees or my wrist or anything. But my wrist
Mhm.
also doesn't like me to get that really strong position to get a lot of hook. So,
Mhm.
I guess that was a good thing because that's when I started bowling better, when it really started hurting back in the middle 80s.
Mhm.
I can still hook the ball a little bit. I just can't
Mhm.
do it like these kids do. That's why I flew around bowling two-handed. I can
Yeah.
hook the ball a little bit. That the difference is I don't have the control that I need to have. I'm decent at it, but the other part of that, I need to practice at it. I don't
Mhm.
practice as much as I need to get as good as I need to. I'm decent, but
Mhm.
I'm not nearly as good to be super, super competitive. But
Mhm.
we got a couple guys. Um, Greg Wilson, he bowls in the
Mhm.
Southern region, and he
Mhm.
bowls on the senior tour. And for those of you watched I've got my Facebook fan page. I stream my tournaments and stuff on there, and I got
Mhm.
a YouTube channel. I put stuff on there,
Mhm.
and you would have seen him bowl because he
Mhm.
was bowling in a tournament, and he bowled really well in the qualifier rounds, and he made the top 12. And throws the ball two-handed. Throws the ball great one-handed, but he has an issue with his wrist where he can't throw the ball one-handed. He throws his
Mhm.
spares one-handed, but to throw the ball, one-handed, he just can't do it. And so he started bowling two-handed, and now he's gotten pretty good bowling two-handed. Now,
Mhm.
me, if I couldn't throw the ball one-handed, I could probably learn to bowl two-handed, and if all my games were two-handed, I'd probably learn how to do that a little bit better.
Mhm.
I just don't put the time into it. I don't put the 20 games a weekend that I need to get better than I am. My 6 games a week that I bowl just aren't enough to really get me better. I'm decent, but I'm
Mhm.
not great.
Did you bowl 300 two-handed though?
I do have several 300s. I got one in league. I was subbing in a league. I shot
That's
300 there,
awesome.
and I even got an 840 in league. Um, and I've got the 2 in the PBA 50 tour tournaments.
That is awesome. So, speaking of 300s, you're going to bowl one tonight because the regular questions are done. I do a thing called going flush in the pocket. We're just some fun questions. And so let's get started. What's your favorite food?
I like Asian food, but I like a little spice. I like when I make spaghetti. I make it a little spicy.
Mm-hmm.
I like a taco salad where I make I like lots of stuff in it. It's a big salad with ground beef and a little
Mm-hmm.
spice in it, and I put more spice in it. I like that. I don't make it so spicy that I can't, it's going to burn my mouth, but I
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's spicy. If you don't like spice, it's probably spicier than you like. But
Mm-hmm.
compared to people that eat in South Asia, it's very mild.
Yeah. No, I eat buffalo chicken and I'm actually having buffalo mac and cheese tonight. So that's yeah, I actually
Well,
had taco salad for
the
lunch.
buffalo sauce, it's okay, but it's not,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's not the kind of sauce that I like. I like the sriracha sauce. It's got a little
Mm-hmm.
sweetness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like that flavor a little bit more.
Yeah. Stephen F says, I hope you get a tournament named after you like Parker and Pete Weber did. Absolutely. And an
Well,
oil pattern. Yeah.
They actually had a tournament with my name on it, the Regional Players Resident Pro Championship. And
Nice.
I got invited to it this year. I qualified for it, and when I found out about that, I'm like, well, and I looked at the format. I'm like, I really don't care for elimination formats. So I was like, I said, I really don't want my name attached to a tournament that has elimination format. And they said, fine. So they took my name off.
Okay.
And as far as naming a pattern or putting my name on a pattern, they asked me about that. And I said, well, let me design the pattern. They said, nope. I said, okay, don't use my name.
Okay. Yep.
If
you were to design a pattern, what would you design?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'd really have to put some thought and effort into it. Talk to some of my friends who really do know stuff about lanes, like John Janowitz or something. I'd probably do something like 58 feet of oil. That way, everybody's ball could hit like mine.
There you go. I vote to rename Cheetah after you, because I mean, man, you like to play out.
Honestly, I really don't. I don't like the Cheetah pattern.
Wow.
I bowl okay on it, but I don't like it. I don't, because it's too wet dry. Because if I hit the 1 or 2 board, it goes sideways left, and if I don't get it there, it doesn't hook enough. And when you bowl against the guys on tour, they use a lot of oil. You know, the oil carries down. So they use so much oil in the front part of the lane, the oil carries down, and after it's crazy on a short pattern. I have to use a super aggressive ball to get the ball to hook up to the pocket. It makes no sense. And I think, you know, and I get it. I don't hook the ball a lot, and all the guys on tour do, and even the guys on the senior tour use, you know, but and I get it. They got to put oil in the lane. I think they put too much oil in the lane. I think, you know, maybe they should think about, you know, there's been this thing going on for the last 40 years. The more oil in the lane, the more people, you know, get more aggressive balls and learn how to hook the ball more. Maybe if they went backwards and went less oil, they'd have to back off. And maybe they'd have to use a plastic ball or something like that, and instead of having to even use a urethane ball. But and then the lanes would actually last longer. But you know, the thought process has always been more oil, more oil, more oil, more oil. And of course, you know, the tour rates are so high nowadays. They would probably have trouble using a pattern that I would have to use a plastic ball on. And that's what I tell people. I says, a pattern that I have to use a plastic ball in, these guys would have trouble.
Yeah. Did you run into, I know it's a long time ago and you may not remember, but 08 Geico Classic where Tommy Jones just lit it up. You're bowling him in the second match. Did you run into the wet dry? It was on Cheetah. You remember that?
I honestly don't remember the show.
That's all right. That's all right. What's your favorite music?
I like rock and roll, and I like rock and roll from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. Even the 2010 and 2020. I even like some of the modern rock. I'm not real crazy about the yelling and screaming that some of the modern rock has. But I like some of it, like Linkin Park. I love Linkin Park. But it's like they kind of just, it's more and more and more kind of thing. And that's the way everything is. But I like a lot of it. You know.
That's good. If you could have dinner with 3 people living or past, who would they be?
Well, I'd have to go with my dad. You know, because he passed away quite a few years ago. And then my sister, who also passed away. I got one of my oldest sisters passed away. She was a nurse, and she was a white water rafting thing, and a person fell out of their raft, and my sister went in and helped the person get out, and my sister got stuck. And so, yeah.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. And my wife, who unfortunately didn't get to meet my dad or my sister.
Yeah. Who's a celebrity you would most like to meet?
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I've been fortunate to meet a few celebrities. I don't know.
All right. What do you do to take your mind off of bowling?
I like games. Um, my sister introduced us to this board game called Terraforming Mars,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of it's got a little bit of sci-fi base to it, where
Mm-hmm.
you're actually going to make Mars habitable.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of that just sounds kind of neat to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a lot of different parts to it. If you actually play the board game, it takes a long time to play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my wife and I, we like to play it, but we play it on our tablets, and the games on a tablet, it lasts a while, but a game might be an hour on a tablet. So,
And the game
but
is
when
called
you're
what
playing
now?
against somebody, pardon?
Well, the game is called what?
Terraforming Mars.
Terraforming Mars. Okay.
Yeah, that's my one plug for today.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
It's an intriguing game, and those kinds of games I like. I mean, back in the old days, it was Monopoly and Risk and stuff like that. But there's certain strategy. Of course, every game has a strategy, and I just kind of like that because there's a lot going on in that particular game of Terraforming Mars.
Absolutely. What are you, a party all night or a quiet night at home kind of guy?
I'm not a partier.
Okay.
I've had like 2 drinks of alcohol in my life. I don't do
Well,
drugs. I don't
right.
smoke. Um,
Well, you could party with a
but
12-pack of Pepsi, I mean, or whatever.
well, yeah. I guess I'm more of a night person than a morning person.
Yep.
But as I got older, sometimes that nighttime comes earlier.
Sure. Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, what's your favorite time of day?
Uh, I don't know. I'm probably more, I like the evening.
Mm-hmm.
I like to play horseshoes. I'd rather
Mm-hmm.
play horseshoes in the evening after the sun goes down when it's a little cooler or not
Yep.
necessarily hot. Down here in
Mm-hmm.
Florida, it gets nice and warm.
Mm-hmm.
But during the wintertime, if it's 40 degrees outside, I don't want to be outside when it's 40 degrees. And I grew up in that kind of weather. So
I got you.
Eureka,
That's fine.
California, which the average high in August is 65 degrees. So
Oh boy, might as
yeah,
well live in Maine. But you play cornhole?
I've played it. I don't
Yeah.
play it much.
Okay.
I know a guy who's really good, Matt Guy. He used to play horseshoes competitively 20
Mm-hmm.
plus years ago. I played against him then, and he started playing cornhole. And he got very, very, very good at it. It was kind of funny. I was at the Tournament of Champions one year in Vegas, and he comes up to me and he goes, I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" So I'm playing cornhole. I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, I do all right at it." He's been world champion several times playing cornhole.
Mm-hmm.
So
Is he
um,
the Walter Ray of cornhole?
I don't know. I know that he's very, very good.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. When COVID broke out
Mm. Yeah.
and we had our tournament in Vegas, he happened to
Mm.
be in Las Vegas also at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But he was up by near Circus Circus. They had this place out there, and he was
Mm-hmm.
basically doing an appearance or something for people. And this is the thing about a sport that you don't play very much or you don't understand very well. Like in
Mm-hmm.
horseshoes, people don't understand the game of horseshoes.
Mm-hmm.
But in cornhole, it's kind of the same thing, where they think, oh, it's an easy game to do. Just throw it and make. It's so simple. How tough could it be? So
Mm-hmm.
he told me at this little thing he did, this exhibition or whatever, he would play all comers. He played 250 people, and the game was to like 21 points. He said the most anybody ever got against him was 10
Mm-hmm.
out of
Wow.
250 competitors. And the same thing would happen if I played people playing horseshoes. They're just not going to do that well. Now in bowling, it's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way I could guarantee that I could beat everybody because of the way bowling's played. It's a short game, and I'm going to bowl a bad game. My ex-wife was not a very good bowler, and she beat me a couple times when we were practicing together, which we didn't do a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
she would have a good game and I have a bad game. It just but in horseshoes, she was a way better horseshoe player than a bowler, and she couldn't beat me in horseshoes back then. Now if she was that good now, she could, because I'm not that good anymore. She doesn't play anymore, but it's just the way those games are played. And it's whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But in bowling's a
Right.
very, very short game, only 10 frames. Anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the guy who leads a tournament has less than a 50% win record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excuse me. What do you Excuse me. What are you binge watching right now?
I'm not.
You don't? Okay.
At times I do, but right now I'm not.
All right. If you weren't an athlete, what would you do for a living?
Got a degree in physics. I would have loved to work for NASA or JPL or something like that,
Yeah.
or maybe as a teacher.
Oh, yeah. You'd be great at that. All right. Let's see here. So three
Maybe
more.
my daughter doesn't think so, but
Oh, how is she doing? May I ask?
she's doing all right. She's 16.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's a fun age.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I'm sure. What's your favorite weather season?
I like warm. I
Okay.
grew up where it was kind of cool, but I like warm. I
Mhm.
like it down here in Florida. I like it warm.
Yep.
I'd much rather be at 90 degrees than 40 degrees. And it gets way colder than that up north.
Yeah. I'm going back home on the 28th. Back to
Where's
Maine.
that at?
Maine.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets much colder up there.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Favorite sports moment as a fan?
I, you know what? I really, when I read the questions earlier, I was like, I really didn't have an answer for that. But now I just thought about it. I
Mhm.
really enjoyed watching the one tennis match at Wimbledon about 2009 or something like that. Um, it was a really good match. Two of the great players, I can't even think of their names. I think might have been Sampras and lefty
Mm.
Nadal. But
Mhm.
that was a really good match, and for whatever reason, I happened to watch it. And I don't watch a lot of tennis. I watch a little bit. I like to
Mhm.
watch golf.
Mhm.
I don't mind watching team sports, but I don't watch a team to cheer for a team, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense.
Mhm.
I don't have any teams that I'm a fan of, if that makes any
Sure.
sense. Which some
Sure.
people just don't understand. They don't understand that concept. And
Mm.
me, I don't understand the concept of how you have to cheer for a team. You know, if you want
Mhm.
to watch a sport, watch the sport. You know, I watched
Mhm.
two good teams playing against each other. You know,
Mhm.
good competition. That's what I like to see. I don't have any favorite players as far as watching golf and stuff and tennis. That's like, but watching good play, the good bowlers. I like watching that. The good competition, the good
Mhm.
horseshoe players. And I think
Yeah.
most people are unfortunately missing out because they don't watch good horseshoe players.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm not
So
nearly as good as I used to be.
okay. So I'm gonna throw this one in there. If somebody was to play you in a movie, who would it be?
Well, we already had a guy do that, kind of, when they did that mockumentary, Any Given Saturday Afternoon.
Okay.
Um, I'm trying to think of his name, but he played Dexter.
Okay.
And he didn't actually play me. He played a character who was kind of like me, but they made
Sure.
serious fun of me, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So if
Where
you've
can
watched, so first off, they had the Pin Gods documentary, which was based in 94, 95.
Okay.
Okay. And then in the 2000s, they had the League of Ordinary Gentlemen, which a
Right.
lot of people are familiar with.
Yep.
Well, there was a mockumentary which was based off of that called Any Given Saturday Afternoon,
Mhm.
and it's a series where they made fun of documentaries, and they made fun of this one, and they did a great job. I think Lorne Michaels is the producer,
Mhm.
um, from Saturday Night Live, so they had a bunch of good actors in it. They probably spent more money on the mockumentary than they did on the documentary.
Mhm.
But yeah, some friends. We were at a bowling tournament. I was staying with Billy Orlikowski, and
Mhm.
some of the guys from Brunswick came over and says, "Does Walter have a good sense of humor?" And Fancy's like, "Yeah, he does." And says, "Well, there's this show, and they kind of make fun of him." And so we started watching a few minutes. I'm like, "Oh my god, this is hilarious!" So we said, "You got to watch this from the beginning." So my recommendation: watch League of Ordinary Gentlemen, which
Yep.
is like an hour and 40 minutes,
Yep.
and then watch Any Given Saturday Afternoon, which is about 20, 25 minutes. It's funny, but it's even funnier because there are references to the original movie in that show, and it makes fun of me, and it's I think it's hilarious.
So I have a League of Ordinary Gentlemen on my Xbox video. Where can we see the other two? Do you know?
Well, Pin Gods, you probably maybe YouTube. I'm not sure.
Sure.
You
Okay.
can probably do a search for that. But
Yep.
Pin
Yep.
Gods is the first documentary. The other one is called Any Given Saturday Afternoon,
Mhm.
and I don't. It might be on Netflix. I'm not sure.
I'll check it
Um,
out.
but you should be able to find it somewhere.
Mhm.
And I definitely encourage, especially your bowler and bowling fan. It makes fun of me, makes fun of Pete, makes fun of Wayne Webb. They don't specifically target us. They don't say our names.
Sure.
But it's like if you watch the movie and you watch the other movie, and you're like, okay, I see that. So yeah.
So final question, and I'll preface it by saying this: I think you're a super guy. Forget
Thank you.
I mean I really do, and you've always been nice to me. When you leave this earth in 1,000 years, how do you want to best be remembered?
Well, I think based in 1,000 years, if they still
Or
have
whenever.
records,
Right.
they'll see that I was a really good horseshoe player and a really good bowler. But beyond that, I think I'm a decent guy. My wife loves me. I love my wife.
She does.
So, but it's hard for people to know a person like that. But I think obviously I would be remembered by my horseshoe and my bowling career.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Walter. You mentioned Bill Orlikowski. He'll be here on next Monday.
Well, tell Billy hi. And
I will.
And you can tell him we're sorry that our dog peed on his couch.
Oh, absolutely. And Tennille Grijalva Milligan will be here Wednesday. So
okay. Yeah.
That'll be awesome. So
yes.
So thank you very much for your time, and you have a great night, my friend. And stay by real quick. I got to ask you a question off the air if you don't mind. Just be real quick. This has been Flush in the Pocket, presented by Brunswick, sponsored by Just in Time Recreation. Check them out at justintimebowl.com.